not commercial, but they're very large trucks. And anyway, the way that he parks them,
Morning, everyone. I'm going to wait a few minutes to give Tara a chance to dial in case she's running just a little bit late.
Yeah, I don't have any emails from her, haven't had any emails from her about not attending this meeting, so I'm keeping an eye on that.
Yep. Okay, so we'll wait just a couple minutes. All right, we've it's been a couple minutes, so we'll go ahead and get started here. So if we could have a call to order and roll call.
Leslie is out today, so I am our clerk as well as the library director. So Krisher.
Here.
Murphy.
Here.
Pardue.
Here.
Toomey is absent.
Okay, public appearances.
Is that you, Tara?
It is.
Yay.
Yay.
Everybody's here.
Okay, so public appearances, look like we had somebody sign in and sign out again.
There's a traffic safety committee meeting that's going on right now. So I wonder if they ended up here and we're looking to talk about paid parking. That topic this morning, I tuned in to make sure they were off and running just fine at 8:30. And so they were just getting into the paid parking discussion when I jumped off to come here.
Okay. All right. So announcements from the trustees.
Yeah, we have a date for the book sale. It's July 7th, 8th, and 9th at the youth center. And
Excellent.
that's, basically it. So that's good.
Okay, great. Thanks. John, Tara, any announcements?
Not really. Thank you.
This is Tara. I don't have any. Thank you.
Okay. So announcements from the library director.
Announcements from the library director. We're working incredibly hard on recruitments. We had interviews for librarian 1s and librarian 2s on Monday. We interviewed 12 people, and my worry always is, especially with a competitive job market, that we wouldn't have any contenders to move forward in the process, but that was to the contrary, and we'll be interviewing all but one of those people as a second round. So I'm really pleased and hopeful that we'll be getting close to fully staffed by March. We have full-time library assistant interviews scheduled for the week of February 7th, along with 2 other librarian 2s. So we should be finishing that up mid-February and start to get people on board and trained. So we're moving along. I know for our patrons, it seems a little slow, but this is actually pretty aggressive. And I'm really thankful for our recruiter, Vilcia Rodriguez, who's helping me get everything organized and build eligibility lists and work with our interview panels. And so I'm very hopeful for this spring and expanding hours. We're on the right track.
Okay, great, thanks. So on to receive a report from the Carmel Library Foundation on recent activities.
Hi.
Hey.
Good morning, Board of Trustees. We do have a lot of information to cover today. Very excited to announce that our board president, Marcy Moe, Ashley Wright, the library director, myself, and Phil Pardue met to discuss ways to work more closely together to achieve mutual goals for the library, and we've all agreed to meet on a monthly basis. Carmel Public Library Foundation is finalizing its financial review at this time. Monterey County Gives campaign raised approximately $48,000. This is before the match, and those funds will be used to support the additional technology that we're using to provide access to our programs both in person and online. And the campaign funds should be distributed in February. The second quarter library distribution was made for $72,775. Our marketing efforts are now focused on our featured community programs for the second half of the year, as well as for our annual event. We've had an in-kind sponsorship, which is new from the Carmel magazine, which we're really excited about. We'll have a full page ad for the March issue, which will run for the full quarter. And that's for our Futurist edition with acclaimed author and global strategist Parag Khanna. KZoo also continues to be a sponsor, and we're receiving additional print support as well for the PineCon. Tickets for the annual fundraiser, the Futurist edition, are now on sale. So you can purchase your tickets at Carmel Public Library Foundation's website or at Sunset Center. And the VIP tickets are $225 and include an advanced book sale and signing with the author, as well as a reception with fine wines and hors d'oeuvres and VIP seating. General edition tickets this year are $75 and will include a wine tasting and program. And we also have special military pricing and also student pricing available for $45 by calling Sunset Center, and we'll be making that more public as well. We really feel like that this edition, the Futurist edition, is really well aligned for a lot of our educational institutions, including MPS, MIS, all of them actually. Our donor salute this year will not be held in person due to health and safety precautions. In lieu of this, CPLF will be mailing a featured frameable postcard with board member signatures, and that will be sent out in March. CPLF received a bequest from former CPLF board director and longtime patron Rod Dewar in the amount of $19,239.48. The trust stated the funds could be used for oral history program or whatever the board felt it needed it most. And since that program is now dormant, the board voted to allocate the funds to the general endowment. The motion was approved, and the funds can be used for that in the future when that does arise or if it gets reactivated. To recognize this year's Sterling Circle.
Alex, this is Tara. Sorry, who did that come from?
Rod Dewar.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. To recognize this year's Sterling Circle members, an invitation to an author reception with Douglas Brinkley will be issued on June 2nd. And that program is called Silent Spring Revolution, John F. Kennedy, Rachel Carson, and Lyndon Johnson in the Great 60s. We're excited to have him back again in June. We have 2 new fundraising committee members and potential board directors. Both have impressive backgrounds in philanthropic endeavors as well as in development. And for those of you who attended Blitzkrieg, our latest cybersecurity cyber warfare program with Professor Emeritus John Aquila, thank you so much. It was very well attended. Our next community program is a fireside chat that we are planning to hold at the Harrison as well as virtually. And that's on February 9th, and it's called Individualism versus the Collective. And we're also in the process of collaborating with Carmel Unified School District on our partnership for our annual event. And our goal this year is $140,000 for this year's event. And lastly, we are launching a book club to support those efforts to bring additional visibility and engage more community members for Parag Khanna's new book called Move, The Forces Uprooting Us. And this book is available for special pricing through our partnership with Pilgrim's Way. And that's all I have. So thank you so much. And if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to respond.
Tara, any questions?
Yeah, this is Tara. Alex, do we know what the program at the high school, what are you looking at, or still in discussion?
Yes. So we re-energized our partnership with the astronaut program in November, and with the Futurist edition, we were looking to find opportunities either with some of the clubs, the TED Talks Club, the Environmental Club, some of the teachers who might be interested, to provide an opportunity for them to perhaps read the book and to come up with questions, be there in person, and we would supply complimentary tickets to those students who want to engage in that way. So we're trying to find the right opportunity with the communications director. I had addressed the superintendent, and now I'm going a little more grassroots to some of the students I know who are active within some of the clubs. And if you have any other ideas for how to engage with them, we'd love to hear them.
So the plan is to tie it into the annual program.
Yes, we feel like this is such an amazing opportunity to have a world-class speaker like this, somebody who's I think going to be very dynamic and engaging, and will speak to the climate, will speak to the economy, politics, and migration. So we felt that the Environmental Club or TED Talks Club or something to that effect, or perhaps some of the teachers might want to include it in their curriculum. So we're just trying to identify the right avenue for this opportunity right now.
Great, thanks.
Sure.
Susan, any questions? Comments?
No, just so Alex knows, Anita said she's leaving me flyers, etc., and the plastic stands, and we're going to put them out. We don't have the market this week, but next week we'll put them out for you.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful. Thank you.
John?
Oh, not really. Just that I really enjoy the programs they have. I'm glad they give them. They're really good for the community. You learn an awful lot out of them.
All right, Alex, thank you. On to the next item, which is approval of the minutes for the December 8th, 2021 special meeting. Any changes need to be made? Can I get a motion to approve?
I'm so moved.
I'll second it.
Okay, so if we could get a vote on the approval of the minutes for the December 8th, 2021 special meeting.
Krisher,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Pardue,
Yes?
Toomey.
Yes.
It is unanimous. Thank you all.
They were to receive the librarians report for November and December 2021.
So with the librarians report, for November, both November and December, the two things that you all probably notice is a dip in our circulation numbers and people coming in the door. That's due to the holidays. Even pre-pandemic, we always saw a drop off in library usage. People are traveling for the holidays. And this year we were closed between the New Year's holiday, or Christmas holiday and New Year's for the entire week. So that also was more than we're normally closed. I think you'll see the numbers rebound based on staff's experience with the levels of busyness at both the main and the park branch since we reopened in January. I don't know if anybody has been seeing our computer usage stats at zero. We've had some trouble with Envisionware, which is our software that runs our public computer workstations at the main. It is a good system, but it is overly complicated for the number of computers that we have. And so I worked with IT, and we are contract with Envisionware is up at the end of February. There is another company called LibKey that ties in with Koha and Bywater, which is our integrated library system. So those systems will talk to each other. The price is exactly the same as it was for Envisionware. The ease of use is for both patrons and for the staff it's just going to be so much better for all of us. So you'll see those stats coming back. Public computers are being used when we were open at the main. And I'm going to be looking at adding in the next couple months, depending on supply and demand and what we can get working with IT, a couple more public workstations at the main that will be spaced out so we can have additional places for people to sit, which will bring us to a total of 5 computer workstations at the main library, which I think will be good. And that's all I have of major note with the monthly reports. It's just that dip in circulation that we typically see around the holidays. And I'm looking forward to getting us back open normal hours when we have more staff on board so that these numbers start to stabilize and we get back to our pre-pandemic levels. And that's it. Any questions?
Tara, you first. Any questions?
No.
Susan?
No.
John?
No.
All right. Thank you for the report. Look forward to the bounce back of numbers in the January and February.
Yes, you will definitely see it. We have typically during lunchtime on the days that we're open, everybody just looks a little, I don't know, it's just a constant go, go, go. So everybody needs that break in the middle of the day. So.
Okay, on to the next item, which is receive the treasurer's report and approve the check register for November and December 2021.
All right, on the treasurer's report, I've kind of simplified it a little bit now, trying to condense it, change it from the way Don did it. First of all, I think to thank the Friends of the Library, they $5,000 over what we had budgeted. And we're really looking good with $33,000 under budget. A lot of those factors, if you could see in my notes, if you go over everything, is we're not spending any money on COVID supplies, training for the staff. We're down on like programs that we're not doing. So it makes us look really well at $33,000 under. I talked to Ashley the other day about this, that since we're $33,000 under this year, may it behoove us to look at replacing some computers that we had talked about last year getting, but held off on, laptops or something, to spend the money, use it this year so when the library picks up next year, we could fund more in-person things that we have coming on since we have the money. But as of now, we look really well on everything. And the check register, everything was really good. There's a few things I asked about, but speaking to Leslie and Ashley, they all worked out perfect.
So for the, if we want to spend more for the on the tech this year, does that need to come back to the board, or is that something that can be done?
I would like to bring it back to the board for a formal budget adjustment.
Okay.
At the end of February. Right now, and to John and I's conversation, I had sent an email to IT in early December about a number of things, some of the things that he had touched on. After John and I spoke, especially in preparing for other new library staff members coming on board, I sent poor IT a book-length email with a list of 6 demands, not demands, but we had a good conversation about what we were looking for in terms of, and we have talked about this at the library board, desktops versus laptops and laptop docking stations and those. And so we've come to agreements on what would work best for library staff and what I'm looking for in terms of desktop replacement computers for the service desks and for public computers. One of our challenges as we've been reopening again has been fighting with Envisionware, but also computer updates with a lot of the security issues that a number of cities have been experiencing. Our IT has been working hard to keep our network safe, but also so many of our computers have been our desktop computers have been laying dormant. And so it's almost, to do updates for those is has become a monumental task. So some of these just need to be straight up replaced. I think we've got a good plan ahead of us. They're going to be working on getting quotes, and I'd like to bring back those quotes and request for budget adjustment at the February meeting.
Okay, thanks. Tara?
No questions. Thank you.
Susan?
Yes, are you going to need more money for training since you've got no people coming in?
The training that we'll kick off with is basically, this is how we do things at this library. But the two things, I did have a staff meeting with our staff as they are now. Two of the things that I have in terms of getting back to normal or getting us back on track was pre-pandemic. I had been looking at a regular training schedule for both full-time and part-time staff so that this was a priority for our off-desk time and something that we regularly scheduled. Too often we get busy and those things we sign up for and they fall by the wayside because something else has come up. So towards the end of the spring, you may see us starting to attend virtual conferences again and doing some of those trainings. So we're not going to spend as much money this year, but we'll probably be hitting it hard to make up for the last couple years in terms of getting us back on track with training. I also have three full-time library assistants, and through the American Library Association, there is a training program for paraprofessionals that I think would be very beneficial to our staff, and I want to prioritize that for them. So you will see more spending in terms of training. And then, John, you'd mentioned not as much spending for COVID supplies. Now that we have our plexiglass up and we have been receiving support, in the form of the city providing us with masks and other things, so we haven't needed to purchase additional COVID supplies, which is good. Hopefully that indicates that we're coming out of it in some way, shape, or form. And then with programs, I'm hoping once we have our new youth services librarian on board, I think there's lots of good opportunities for partnerships with the youth center. And we'll be going into summer reading as well. We'll probably keep some of it virtual, but I think there's opportunities to use the park right across the street from us to do some interesting things during the summertime. So, but that will probably carry over to next fiscal year. This spring is just going to be about getting our library open and expanded hours. That'll be the big focus.
All right. Any other further questions or comments before we move to the next item?
I think we need to do a roll call vote for the check register still.
Oh, okay.
I move we okay the check register for, is it both December and November and December.
Second it.
Okay, if we could get the motion is to approve the check register for November and December of 2021. Can we get a vote there, Ashley?
Krisher.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes.
Pardue.
Yes.
Toomey.
Yes.
It is unanimous. Thank you all.
Okay, now we're on to the introduction to an amendment of the Harrison Memorial Library Board of Trustee bylaws, updating the timing of the election officials.
Yes, so at our last meeting, we discussed the election of officers. And one of the things that we discussed was the change in the term expirations from September 30th to April 30th by the City Council. Rather than, and we were down Tara at that December meeting, rather than appoint a new president, vice president, and treasurer right before the expiration of terms or that part of the process in the spring, we discussed amending the bylaws so that the election of officers would come after the City Council or the mayor and mayor pro tem have appointed or reappointed our board members. In review of the bylaws, one of the requirements is that the bylaws be amended at a regular meeting. 4 or more members need to vote yes, and these need to be submitted at least 4 weeks in advance for public notice. So this item is before you today just for review and not for voting on the item. It will come back at the February meeting. to change the appointment date. I did include, and we can discuss whether it's June, July, or August. I included July or August. May would be the first month for us to take, that the new members would take their seat. That's right in the middle of the budget process. We have in past years typically adopted our budget at the end of June. And I did not include this. I'm not recommending that we do this in June, simply because if we change treasurers mid-stride, mid-budget process, I don't think that will serve us well. So July or August would make more sense to me, working with the treasurer, but I will leave it to all of you for discussion.
It makes sense to me if Phil's willing to stay on through July. That would be the only
So, you know, it's,
because I know John is. So.
well, so Susan, you know, happy to serve as long as necessary to have for the board. I think that you know, when I look at it, we have a situation where the council's changed terms, you know, the dates, and you know, how to make the transition smoothest for the operation of the library and the trustees going forward. So, you know, on the one hand, you know, having it in May, I mean, a potential could be you have the voting in June with a turnover date at the end of July, so that you have I'm thinking more so for the treasurer than for the president or the vice president, and the selected treasurer can kind of track the process as it goes through the end and is up to speed for the execution of the next fiscal year. Mm-hmm. And then when this have it for two, you know, that would be one option. The risk of waiting until June is that we have two board members whose term ends the end of May. Right. So we have, we're supposed to have 5, we have 4. We have 2 that end at the end of May. And if the city does nothing, we'll have 2 board members on the board of trustees, and that's it. Right. Going forward. Having it, so, I mean, that, you know, otherwise you could say you could have it right before the selection, so people know. I mean, you usually know who's going to stay, who's going to leave, who's chose to compete again. No guarantee that the city will pick. So, you know, as I look at it, you know, I'm kind of agnostic on you know, which way we go with this. But as I see it, those are the pros and cons of some of the different options out there. And I appreciate, you know, Tara's been probably the longest serving board member that we have. I think has had 1 or 2 terms as president. So would be interested in what she had to say.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. This is Tara. So it seems to me that it's kind of been an unusual process, even in past years, where we have been electing officers and then people are reappointed, and that has always seemed odd to me. I would much prefer, and it sounds like we're headed in the direction where we know who's going to be on the board, and then we choose the officers. And so, Phil, I understand that, you know, there are concerns about you know, whether we'll have a full contingent, but I'm not sure we should be making, I mean, I think the assumption should be that we'll be operating on a full contingent, or at least close to a full contingent. I think if we're assuming that we're going to be short all the time, that's maybe more problematic. But I guess I think that there's also some value. I guess my preference is to push it into July, because I do think that will give whoever, a new member, for example, an opportunity to come on, to have had a meeting in June, to just have some introduction to the system before they would be in the position of making votes. Or I guess they would have to vote on the, actually, would they vote on the budget? if they come in, if the appointments are May, when would they actually get seated?
Yeah, they would get seated at the May meeting. I know that Councilmember Barron had put May 30th as the expiration date, but it's April 30th. And so what is going to happen is February and March will be the recruitments and the interviews by the mayor and vice mayor, and then the formal appointments by the council would be at that May council meeting. So for us, because our meeting's at the end, if we have new bodies, they would take their seat at the end of May and be there for the budget process to vote on that. So we could, as Phil said, vote on new officers at the June meeting, because typically we vote on the officers and then they take their seat at the next meeting, not immediately. So there is a little bit of wiggle room there.
And what do you think about, I mean, I actually think if we're seating, if people are going to be attending the May meeting and then we review that in June, that would be, and then the officers take their seats in July, which would be the first meeting of the fiscal year, right?
Right.
That also makes sense to me, as long as that doesn't put kind of too much on the plate for the June meeting. I don't think it does. I think, our elections have been fairly haven't been contentious at all in all the years that I have been on the board. So I wouldn't expect that to change significantly. So I would be okay. Ashley, kind of, you were a little reluctant on June, so I'm kind of curious what your thought is on the, a June vote with a July start.
One of the other things that occurs to me, and I think that this may be actually a non-issue, especially watching the transition with Dawn and John, which is that we would be doing the end of year wrap up. We usually do that in July or August. So, but again, that would be a good transition and work plan for the new treasurer coming in for the July meeting. So June for appointment of officers and taking that new seat in July would be just fine, I think. That makes sense. And like you say, Tara, our June agenda is usually light. It's usually just consists of the budget and that budget adoption.
So I think I think that's a good idea. I wouldn't want to do it in May. I think that doesn't give any newly seated members an opportunity to get their feet wet at all. But I think a June election with a July start seems to make sense.
Yeah, but I agree. The one thing I look at is the treasurer's position. It's always nice to have the outgoing person close the books on the fiscal year and give a wrap up and let the new person take over. So there's no, the books are clean going forward. Not that we've had a problem with the books whatsoever, but that the books are clean going forward. It seems to be a clean break. And as we look at the dates, that'd be, my only recommendation on that. Anyway.
In which case,
so would you just, yeah, oh, go ahead.
Which I think is what you were talking about, Tara. I think that the timeline that you put out achieves that. And so, I'd be happy with that. I can see Ashley's thinking about it.
I am. So are we at July and August? So July appointments and August take your seat, because that gives the outgoing treasurer time to clean up books and end of year reconciliation and all of that, and then the new treasurer would take their seat in August? Or are we sticking with election in June, take your seat in July? What is?
I think the election in July, take your seat in August is best for the treasurer, position, closing the books and starting out. And that would be the otherwise, and that is the only reason I prefer that, because I actually like the June date, take your seat in July, because there was some discussion every now and then we miss a July meeting.
Right.
And so if we do that, if there's a risk of that, now we're pushing everything to the right yet again. So I would say that, my desire to have, close the books and start in August should be weighed against how often do we actually move the July meeting because schedules don't work, and are we actually better off just doing it in June and moving on?
I would prefer June, and then July being the handoff month. So I could envision, for example, the outgoing treasurer, essentially a joint report for July.
Okay.
Right. So where the outgoing treasurer and the incoming treasurer kind of do this jointly. It's, it's the transition meeting essentially, where that happens. So I don't see that it precludes the outgoing treasurer from wrapping up the year.
Works for me.
I'm concerned.
I like
I would be concerned too, Phil, because I think what would happen is if we have to push back, then we push back to August. But if we're already into August and we push back, then we're into September.
Right.
It just seems like that could get stretched out a long time. And I think May feels too soon. But if you're talking about seating in August, then that has the potential to go out too far. So I'd rather kind of keep it as close as possible to the appointment possible. But it just seems like having that election in May is just too soon.
Okay. Yeah.
Very good. Okay.
And just to give Susan and John a chance to comment, do either of you have any comments, or you happy with the June?
I think June and July is perfect because when the new treasurer takes over, you're working with the old one, so you could, the end of the year budget, you two would work together on that. And the July treasurer's report would be a joint thing if there's a new treasurer, then the two of them work together. And if the same guy is there, the same person's there, then he gives that report. I think your idea, June electing and July taking over is good to me. It seems the most, from my position, because Don helped me out, and you want to work together a little bit. And if you work the whole end of the year together, then you have a really good relationship with that incoming treasurer.
Good. All right. Susan?
No, that sounds fine.
All right. So Ashley, we get to see this again?
You get to see this again. And the way the bylaws are written, what I'm going to do is I'm going to email out the bylaws amended to all of you and probably post them somewhere on the website, since we have what I had originally proposed with July and August on page 1 of the attachment, to reflect that the elections of officers will occur in June. And I want to clean up that language that the officers will take their seats in July. The way it's previously listed is they give a backup month, and so I want to clarify it based on our discussion today. So I will send that out right after that meeting. So we're within that 15 or that 4 weeks of having this provided to the Board of Trustees with those further amendments. So we're ready to go to vote on it at the February meeting.
All right. Sounds good to me. Thanks. Any final comments? Okay, so we're on to item number 8, the accept a restricted bequest in the amount of $59,000 from Keith B. Virginia P. Evans Trust and provide direction.
So we received the last bequest check from the Keith B. and Virginia P. Evans Trust. Some of you who are longer term board members will remember that the Evans Trust is restricted to be spent only on books or art for the enhancement of the main library reading room. We have previously accepted bequests in the amount of $350,000, and that was in 2015. And then we received a bequest in the amount of $100,000, and that was 2019. So with quite a bit of funds there in the Evans Trust restricted fund. There was a point in 2019 where we had formed an ad hoc committee to look at, and that consisted of President Pardue and Treasurer McDougall, to meet with the library director to figure out how we could expend those funds, what the best thing to do with those funds was. But we didn't get very far with that. At this time, and I'm looking for board direction and thoughts on this, I'm not recommending that we spend any funds to purchase more art or books for the reading room. I'd rather that we figure out how we can expend those funds to support the library master plan and work with the Carmel Public Library Foundation. For instance, one of the things that I have had on my kind of back burner to-do list for the main library is to take a look at the artwork that is hung there and the city's art collection overall, and see if there's any opportunities to have somebody who has expertise, curator expertise, and looking at can we move some of the artwork that we currently have hung? Is there better places to spotlight these pieces that we have, especially in the reading room with the larger paintings that we have up above? I'm sure some of you have noticed the Charles Rollo Peters, which is a night scene, which you cannot really see where it is hung, and it's doing that piece of art a disservice. So I think something like that is a potential, and again, working in tandem with whatever is happening with the master planning so that everything is cohesive. I think there are opportunities there. So that was my thinking when we received this bequest, and thinking about how we could start thinking about expending the Evans Trust funds if that is the direction we want to move in the next couple of years. And that is my report for this point in time. So whatever the Board of Trustees thinks, we can go from there.
Okay, Tara, any comments?
So one, yes, we should accept the gift.
Yeah.
Two,
Yeah.
I think that's right. I think we've kind of, my recollection is we kind of had a committee and we had COVID all at the same time. And I think that supporting the existing master plan is a great idea. But what I'm hearing from Ashley is we're just gonna kind of cool our heels for a little bit on this, accept the funds, and then work to figure out what to do with them again, kind of restart that process. So, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay, Susan, any comments?
No.
John?
Yes, I agree with Ashley's on the art. I've been talking to several people in town have told me about the art collection that the library has. And there's some very beautiful and great pictures. And Ashley's idea about getting them out so they can be more enjoyed by the public is a great idea. And that is towards the arts, what the grant says. So it may be a thing worthwhile looking into.
All right. So today we're going to accept the bequest, and but we're going to hold off on the direction until we get a plan. So in the future. So I need a motion to accept the funds.
I'll move to accept the funds.
So moved. Oh, second. Okay.
So we get a roll call on the motion to accept the restricted bequest in the amount of $59,000.
Krischer.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes.
Pardue.
Yes.
Toomey.
Yes.
It is unanimous. Thank you all.
Okay, we're now on to the last item on our agenda is to review and discuss and provide staff with the direction regarding the Harrison Memorial Library Outdoor Connectivity Project.
All right, so this is a project that I think that the board has some awareness of, so it's not completely out of the blue, and it is something that the executive director of the foundation and I worked on kind of at the height of the pandemic with the Monterey County Gives campaign. And this was before we had opened our library doors again, to look at how to enhance the space that we had, which was outdoors, and seeing how people were using the garden in particular at the main library. And in order to access our wireless and have places to work and study. It was a frequent request before we opened when I'd be emptying the book drop. Is there anywhere else to sit? Is there anywhere in the garden for me to plug in? So we put this out there to Monterey County Gives, and the Carmel Public Library Foundation received a number of donations towards this project. especially with our limited hours and especially with the way that COVID's going. I'm sure some of you have been following the parklets discussion. People still want to be outside, and we are still at this point with Omicron raging, restricting seating inside the main library and at the park branch. We met with representatives from the Planning and Building Department, the Public Works Department, and I reached out to the Carmel-by-the-Sea Garden Club preliminarily to introduce them to the concept of what we were looking at doing in the main library garden, which is to provide seating and to provide charging stations for people to sit, gather, be outdoors, be in our library space, but also still engage in their work and their studying just as they would if they were indoors. We have not moved beyond those phases, and I have attached preliminary project description and some of the preliminary designs. These are preliminary. We have not moved past this, and these are just to help everybody with visuals. So to see what we're looking at, to show you that, of course, as always with the main library, that we are respecting the historicity of that space and the garden space, while still bringing a little bit of the future to our community in order to support those needs. Due to demands on staff, myself in particular, the project has kind of been in a holding pattern as we've worked to get new staff on board. You all know I took on a third job, which is being city clerk. And so we've kind of been, I've been in survival mode. As Alex mentioned during her update, she and Phil and Marcy, the president of CPLF, met earlier this month to talk about how we can better facilitate and move projects of this nature forward. And one of the things I think we'll need to do is to bring awareness to the city council about the fact that, one, we have funding, and that also this is a priority for the Board of Trustees in terms of making a recommendation for council about the library and library projects. Although we do have funding from donations from Monterey County Gives Campaign, a project like this, even though it is a smaller project in scale compared to something like the Gathering Place, will still need the support of the Public Works Department and likely the Planning Department in addition to my time. And so that's kind of over and above at this point where we are with the MOU in terms of basic maintenance from Public Works. And so I think it is important that we have the City Council's support and their awareness of what we want to do so that we can move this forward in a timely fashion, because it has been languishing. And so that's why this item is before you. We are starting the city's budget process. They will be voting on their budget calendar at this upcoming February meeting next Tuesday. Typically, the capital improvement plan is reviewed at a special meeting at the May council meeting. So we have a few months to look at projects like this and to advocate for carrying over, for instance, the master plan if needed into the next fiscal year to include funding and hopefully city staff support. So that's why this item is before you today, just for preliminary review, update on where we are, which is again in a holding pattern, but also, what has been done to date. And I'll also ask Alex if she has any remarks about the project, since she's been working hard on it, for her to chime in. And we're both here to answer any questions.
I think you covered it, Ashley. We are, poised to begin when we can all, find the time in our schedules and can map out with the city what their role will be. And we're here to support that as the foundation to support that process. So we do have volunteers who have experience with environmental landscape, et cetera, but we will work together, you and I and the Board of Trustees and CPLF to initiate, make it happen. So just let us know how we can support you further.
And I think it's with this project, it's important to note, this wasn't a project that had been included necessarily in our strategic plan. This is a good example of a project that does fit in with our strategic plan in terms of our strategic plan had been kind of focused very much on our library spaces, which with the pandemic that got shut down. This was a reimagining of what are our library spaces, and we hadn't really been thinking of the outdoors like this. And so while it wasn't explicitly stated to do an outdoor connectivity project, I think it is absolutely in line with our intent with the strategic plan, and not something that's out of left field. It's a solid project that I think would serve our community well.
I have a couple of comments. First of all, we do have the nice weather, or we're having, and we usually do between storms. I assume that the furniture would stay out during the rain, etc.
That's yet to be determined. That's something depending on the furniture.
That's a problem. And the other thing, looking at the tables and so forth, when I've either waited for Library Foundation meetings or walked through the space, people use it, and I think that would be great. Also, the problem might be that a lot of people might use those tables for lunch, to eat at, which would be okay, except, you might have critters or, crumbs and, that's my other, comment about using that space. Is that I see a lot of people, for instance, using the benches there for lunch, etc., which is fine. But that's a, something we need to think about. And the possibility also, and I know that's in there about anchoring chairs, etc. Does she need to get in, or you want me to let her in, or yeah. Okay. So that's basically what I have. I'm going to let somebody in.
So yes, to Susan's point, there are a number of people who are out there. I know that John can attest to this, having their coffee and pastries in the morning and using the benches like this. So that may be a use of that space. It's also, we did relax those rules for the indoor space as well, pre-pandemic, for food in the library, in particular to help support our young scholars in having their brain food. We did I think a pizza delivered one time to the main library, which was great for some teenagers in the teen lounge during finals. That is a potential use for those tables outdoors. And there's still a number of, again, the tables that were proposed and attached to those were just to give a visual example. Details like Susan mentions with, are we pulling the tables in and out every night? When do they get wiped down? Is this a staff function? How do we do that? Those are things that we'll work on and test out, just like we do with everything else as we work through policies. So it's not something that I'm terribly worried about at this point.
I have a comment about the people using them. I think if they're out all the time, people may use them in the morning for coffee. But I think once the library is open, I think it'll be used by people at the library. People, because they can they use a computer outdoors if it's nice. I think it may be an issue if they're there all the time in the morning, could be a little bit of a mess, because when we used to use it during the pandemic, there was quite a bit of a mess we had to clean up from people who would, but that was a different time. You couldn't eat indoors in a restaurant, places like that. So that may change.
And that's something perhaps we could work with. We've got the garden club out there once or twice a month who are working on the garden specifically, and that is their mission and their charge. But maybe it's something we could work with on with Carmel Cares on. And I forget what their litter patrols card, they have a clever name for that. And maybe we could ask for their support in kind of doing a pass through when they patrol downtown in Carmel to do a pass through of the main library garden, and add that in to make sure that those types of things are kept at bay. Even now, without tables and chairs in place, that would be a good thing to make sure our garden looks tidy with the foot traffic that we see there.
I think it's a great idea. I've talked to 2 people about it, and both of them are in great support of it. So I think you have a great idea and should move forward on it.
Ashley, can I just say a couple of things?
Please.
One is, I think that as this pandemic continues, I think that we'll be seeing, as Ashley mentioned, that individuals want outdoor seating and outdoor to remain outside. So I think that makes sense just going forward. I think that probably will be a big part of the new normal. And the second point I would like to make to address the community use of that space is that it is part of the evolution of libraries to become more integrated into the community, and to have people eating there or have activity, I think is a good thing. And I think would enhance our library usage perhaps, and just be, I think, very relevant for where libraries are heading anyway. So I'm excited about it too.
Tara, any comments, concerns?
Only that I think this is Tara. So I would just say that I think conceptually it's great. There will be some devil in the details, obviously, as we get down to it. But I don't think we're at that stage where we're going to kind of drill down on these things. So so I don't know if Ashley, mostly what you're looking for is direction. I don't think we need a vote. So, but I think
we don't need a vote.
Great.
No, we don't need a vote. This preliminary discussion, as far as I'm concerned, has been very helpful. I would like to bring this back as a component of a larger discussion about what the Board of Trustees would be recommending to the City Council in terms of capital improvement plan support. I mentioned earlier the master plan and any other items that we think would be of importance for discussion as part of the City Council's budget planning process. So that
I just think that for us, we can talk to, our constituents, people in the city. I'm assuming at this point we can, say, hey, what do people think about this? I think generating ideas and some, some of the challenges that might present themselves in details, I think looking around and getting input on those would be helpful.
So the question I have is, you're already talking to Public Works about this, Ashley. What stage are those conversations?
Still some information gathering. So for the connectivity piece of this in particular, for charging stations, where we can potentially install those, and the amount of work that would entail, what that would look like. And also working with the Garden Club on that if it requires relocating any plants to support that piece of it, not the tables part of it, but just in particular the electrical components.
Right. So I fully appreciate the points that Tara laid out, and at what stage we think we're in. But in my short time on the board, there's been many times where by the time the board finds out, the city's already made a decision, or they think it's a done deal. So, part of the discussions, the reason I met with Marcy and Alex and you is to make sure that the board has an opportunity in their official forum to discuss these things and to have an opinion as it goes in front of the city council and the other departments, so that we're not caught out. They think it's happening, and it may already be happening without the board exercising its duties as required in our charter, for the lack of a better word, with the city. And so at what point do we need to come back and have a vote if necessary? I mean, we may not, but at what point, what is the decision point where the Board of Trustees has an opinion on this? And I think it's a great thing and it needs to be done. But I do think that we need we have a responsibility. We need to exercise that responsibility. And at what point do we need to do that?
Yeah, very, very
just
good.
Add, Ashley, that we also had a committee. I think that Tara was mentioning to get opinions of people. We had internal and external stakeholders on a committee when we first started discussing the project. So I just want to make sure that too, that we the library and the foundation are trying to be transparent, taking into consideration aesthetics and all of that.
Right. So what I think I would like to propose to do is to for Alex and I to revisit that ad hoc committee to restart the discussion with Public Works about what all this would entail, and start to get into some of those details that Tara mentioned on what this would look like, and bring back an update at the February meeting, along with an update on what the council's budget calendar is looking like, so that we have a good timeline once they approve that on where we go from there. And that way we can just, I mean, my suggestion would be to bring this back for the next foreseeable meetings until the Board of Trustees has reviewed what the plans are, and what the community stakeholders, various city departments have recommended, so that you are all fully informed as to as many details of the project as possible, and can make a recommendation to the city council on whether or not to move forward. Does that sound reasonable, and what you are thinking about in terms of kind of getting us on that track, Phil?
It does. And Alex, I don't want you to think that I don't think this is a great thing and that we should do it. And I like the concept, I like where it's going. So I have no problems there whatsoever. But I do think that the Board of Trustees has a responsibility to have an opinion to help both the library and the Library Foundation as we move forward. And I think that what Ashley has laid out will get us there. And again, I'm as the longest serving board member, I'm interested if Tara has any comments or disagreements or what she has to say.
No, I don't have anything more. I mean, I think that's a good plan. I do think that it is somewhat incumbent on us as trustees to also do our own kind of due diligence in the community and see, what
Yep.
people, I mean, it sounds like Alex has, that
Yep.
there's been some community input, and that's great. But part of the reason we're here is so that we too can be asking around and I'm not sure that we'll have anything different or new from what has already been expressed. But I think just seeing what the community thinks about it is a great idea. And I similarly think the concept is great. I think we're going to be moving outdoors more and more. We have a great climate for it. So there's all kinds of reasons why these things are great. But I think an opportunity to talk about some of those details next time would be good.
All right, well, that sounds like a plan to me.
Yep. And and I don't want to slow the process down either. I mean, there's reasons to keep moving forward. I just want to make sure that we have timely updates to the board so that as we move forward.
Yeah.
So helpful rather than standing in the way. Okay. No, so Susan, John, any final comments?
No, sounds good.
I think that when she brings it back in February, I think the board should have a decision by no later than the 30th of April. We should know where we want to be well before the city gets into the budget, to be way ahead of this. It's a fantastic idea, and 2 people I've talked to have loved it. So I think we should really go forward and get things started.
Yeah, we can take a look at the budget calendar. The city council will be having a number of special meetings. And keep in mind too, I know I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I know all of you all work and have your various other jobs and things like that, but we can always, if needed, hold special meetings because we do meet at the end of the month, which is right before the city council meets the week before. So if we need to mid-month to keep this project moving forward, we can hold a quick special meeting if needed. Or multiple special meetings in the months probably of March and April.
Okay. All right. If there's no further comments on the outdoor connectivity project, we'll move on to future agenda items.
So future agenda items will include the library outdoor connectivity project. I'll bring back an item with the city council budget calendar for all of your awareness. We will have the amendments to the bylaws with regards to the appointment of new officers. And that is what I have at the moment.
Okay. And so we talked about how do we, if the Library Foundation has something they want us to consider early, how do they get that agenda item in? Do they bring it up now? Do they send it to you? Do they send it to me? How does that happen so that we're in compliance with appropriate?
yeah, we don't have an official policy on that. If you have an item that you want to add to a future agenda item, please email it to Phil and I for inclusion on the agenda so we can discuss. And please, I mean, at least I start working on the agenda packet the week before we have a meeting. So I was working on this last Monday. So the sooner the better.
Okay. All right. Any saved rounds? Anybody, before we adjourn, final comments? Okay. Well, thank you very much. We'll go ahead and adjourn and see you next month.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good.